Hi, and welcome to another The Golf Week That Was podcast. I hope you've all had a fantastic week. Uh, Not quite as much to talk about this week, so this podcast might be a little bit shorter than what we've had in the past. Let me just get rid of that timer. There we go. So, just a little bit of housekeeping first, which I always start with. There won't be a podcast next week. I have made the very impulsive decision to go out and visit my brother out in Florida. I've just completely had enough of this cold weather in the UK. It's absolutely depressing. So I just thought, sod it, and I put myself a flight and I'm going over to see him. It's always great to go out there and spend some time with my brother, but I'm also going to hopefully be able to get a load of great content for the channel as well. So I'm really looking forward to that. On today's show, I'll quickly go through my golf week. That's not going to take long, trust me. We've got the Arnold Palmer Invitational. There's no DP World Tour this week, so we're going to touch on the LPGA Tour because we shouldn't forget that there's some great women's golf out there as well. Halfway cuts, that's probably going to be the biggest talking point in this week's show. And also the international series on the Asian Tour, because I've got some real thoughts about where I think that could be heading in the future. And I think it is going to play a big part in shaping the world of golf moving forwards. So quickly, my golf week. Like I said at the start, the weather's gone really cold here in the UK. We'll be, usually hoping that spring might come a little bit early and we start to get a bit of better weather and the temperature starts to go up a bit. The actual opposite has happened and it's gone absolutely freezing cold. It's dragging a load of cold air down from the Arctic. It's going to sit in here for, I think it's going to be about a week at least. There's actually snow forecast this week, which in March in the UK is pretty unusual to say the least. So I played on Saturday and I played on Sunday, but it was purely only because I'm trying to find a golf swing to take across the pond for when I start playing in Florida when I get there, later this week. So I probably wouldn't have played that much because it wasn't that enjoyable. But yeah, like I say, I wanted to try and play and get a little bit of feel for what I'm doing before I get out to see my brother in Florida. So yeah, get into the comments. Let me know what your golf week's been like. Hopefully you've had a lot better opportunity to play than I did. So let's start with the Arnold Palmer Invitational. This is exactly what the PGA Tour are trying to achieve. They couldn't, for their first really big designated, elevated event, whatever they want to call it these days. This was an amazing showcase for what they're preaching at the moment. The names at the top of the leaderboard were pretty much all there. Jon Rahm wasn't there, but he was there earlier in the week. Excuse me. The course was set up so tough. I mean, I didn't realize that Arnold Palmer's actual sort of dream for Bay Hill was to host the US Open. If they decided to host the US Open on that golf course and the USGA set it up like they do, bone hard with, ridiculously high rough and tight fairways. I mean, Jesus, they could shoot some big numbers around that golf course. Because even with the way they set it up, which was really firm, they didn't cut the greens on after the first round on Thursday because they knew that there was going to be high winds on Friday. And it was brutal on Friday in those winds. Jon Rahm, who just looked like he tripping. He just didn't miss the flag for a whole 18 holes on Thursday, and then shot 76. And in his interview afterwards, he was like, "That was an amazing round of golf. 76 in those conditions on that golf course is actually not that bad a score." But the last day, I have to say, was extremely exciting. The standard of players that were at the top, you had Rory up there, Scotty Scheffler. There was the whole, world number one thing going on. If one of those had won, they go back to world number one. Jordan Spieth was there. We'll get onto Jordan a bit later. Yeah, it was just a great advert for the PGA Tour, just at the right time when they need it, because obviously Live Tour has started their season. and they're going to try and start to get, sort of like more and more attention to what they're doing. So this event couldn't have been better timed, really. And the winner, I mean, they probably might have wished for one of the big names to actually win it if that could have been made it absolutely perfect. But you can't take anything away from Kurt Kitayama. I mean, one thing that was getting on my nerves was like further into the back nine and the nearer he got to winning, Paul Azinger seemed to feel like he needed to try and say his name in a more Japanese way every time he said it, which was absolutely embarrassing. But, there's a guy that I think, if you didn't know he was a pro golfer, he could do some serious hustling on the golf course because his golf swing is not pretty. It is not a nice thing to look at. It's certainly not something you want to copy. It's got a lot of hands in it. He is like, definitely relying on natural talent and, an eye for hitting a golf ball because I'm sure, well, for certainly what it looks like to me is his club face isn't that square for that long in that golf swing, the way he turns his wrists over through strike. But, I mean, he played amazing. I mean, I can't remember ever someone getting a triple bogey in the last round and going on to win the tournament, which is what he did. He triple bogeyed the ninth, and I thought that was him done, but fair play to him. He didn't lose his head, he didn't get angry, he didn't get down. And, the back nine was playing so tough, it was actually more of a sort of a survival rather than, pushing on and trying to make birdies. So full marks to him. And, that also his caddy that he had on the bag. Apparently he's only had him on the bag for 2 weeks. I think his name's Tim Tucker. Pretty sure that's his name. Bryson DeChambeau's old caddy. So there's a guy who's, I'm sure Bryson's not the easiest person to caddy for. And when I say that, I don't mean that just in his personality, and he's quite demanding. Just all the science that is involved in the decision making for Bryson's shots. Just so much more for a caddy to do than what you do with what I'd say would be a more regular thinking player. So, and I think he definitely played his part on that back nine in helping his player get over the line. And that shot he played into 18, when he put his drive in the rough on 18, I thought, I can see him taking bogey here quite easily, and we're going to go into a playoff. And I think there was going to be like maybe 4 or 5 players in the playoff. But he hit an amazing shot out the rough. I mean, pitched it on the front of the green, it released out into the middle of the green, and then it was a pretty standard 2-putt. Well, no, that's a bit harsh to say it was a standard 2-putt, but you'd expect him to 2-putt it, and I mean, he nearly holed it for a birdie. I mean, it was like literally half a rotation away from being a birdie. So, fair play to him. I think I have to talk about Jordan Spieth, only because I mentioned it in the last episode of the podcast, in that I really think that his putting is really becoming a problem, and for sure, his putting on the back nine at Bay Hill cost him winning this tournament. He could have won it fairly easily if he'd had the Jordan Spieth putting action of his, of sort of like 4 or 5 years ago. It just seems to me that something that was without doubt his outstanding strength in his game has almost become his biggest weakness. You were for a time there when he was winning his Masters and everything. I mean, you were giving him putts from 10 feet and inwards. He was that good. And now he just doesn't look like he's going to hold them under pressure from that kind of range. And he missed at least 4 on the back nine at Bay Hill that you would normally expect him to hold. And he only finished, I think he finished 2 off the lead. So he would have won it quite comfortably if he putted really well. So I think that's got to be a little bit of a worry for him going into the Masters. We know his Masters record. We know he loves Augusta. He's definitely going to be there or thereabouts, I'm sure. But, Augusta National is a, short game golf course. If you've got any kind of weakness in your short game or putting, that golf course is going to find you out. And I really worry about Jordan's putting right now for his chances for winning the Masters. Get into the comments, let me know. Let me, if you think that's, you think Jordan's not got a problem with his putting, or he's definitely got a chance of winning the Masters. I think that's gonna possibly just have him coming up a little bit short in the Masters for me. I always like to do my notables. I have to think give a shout out to Harris English, who came tied second. But what made that tied second even more impressive for me was the fact that he played the last round with Rory McIlroy. Now, playing in the last round with Rory McIlroy is the nearest thing that you get to playing in the last round with Tiger Woods. Not quite the furore and crowds and noise and all that kind of stuff, but it's the nearest you're going to get. And he was not fazed by playing with Rory whatsoever, and he went toe-to-toe with him all the way, and they both ended up tied second. So, fair play to him. I thought that was a really impressive display by Harris English. And the other one that I noticed, and I've noticed him in quite a few tournaments this year, and I do think that you need to keep an eye on this guy because he's been a world number one in the past. He's suffered terribly with injuries, but I honestly think his game is starting to trend in the right direction. And that's Jason Day. Jason Day was tied 10th, and he's starting to put a lot more consistent performances together now. He seems to have got over his real chronic back injuries and back trouble. And there's no doubt that guy's got flipping so much natural talent for playing golf that if his body allows him to start to actually perform, then it wouldn't be surprised if we see Jason Day back winning golf tournaments this year. So that's sort of it for the Arnold Palmer Invitational. I think that the golf course was probably the second winner, and the number one winner was the PGA Tour for sure. That was the perfect advert for their product and what they offer and everything they're talking about at the moment about these elevated designated events. All the best players on the tour playing against each other more often. And they got it in that tournament. And a lot of them were there in the mix on the last day as well, which was just an absolute perfect storm for the PGA Tour. We're going to get into their plans for next year with their designated events with halfway cuts a little bit later on in this podcast, and I've got some pretty strong views on that as well. So let's wrap up the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Just an amazing event, fantastic. It'd be interesting to see. It is rumored that is going to be one of the chosen limited field no cut events next year, and I honestly think that if that happens, that Arnold Palmer will be rolling in his grave because that's not what Arnold Palmer believed in for his tournament. Like I said earlier, he wanted that course and that tournament to be a US Open course, as far away from a limited field no cut event that you could ever get. So we'll have to just wait and see. But all indications are that Arnold Palmer Invitational is going to be a limited field no cut event next year, which I just think is a great shame. But let's wait and see if that is actually the case. So, like I said, there was no DP World Tour this week. So I woke up each morning, turned on the TV to have my breakfast, and the ladies' LPGA Tour was on live from Singapore. So I watched quite a bit of that. And you know what? I do watch quite a bit of women's professional golf on the LPGA Tour, and you've got to come at it and appreciate it in a totally different way to when you watch the men's golf. The men's golf is obviously it's just an absolute to come up with a cliche. It's a power game. These guys are hitting it enormous distances. Shortening golf courses down. 7,500 yards now is a short golf course for these guys. I honestly think that if you wanted to make a golf course now play like golf courses did for the pros in the late 80s and early 90s when they were using wooden clubs and Balata golf balls, you would probably have to make that golf course somewhere between 9,000 and 10,000 yards long. And I know that sounds absolutely ridiculous, but if you think about it, it's true. If you want to make all the par fives into genuine 3-shot holes, and you want to have some of these guys hitting long irons into par fours, and you want to have some par threes where they have to hit 5, 4, or 3 irons, that course is with the way these guys hit it now. The course is going to have to be over 9,000 yards, which, when you think about it, is absolutely preposterous. But that is the reality. You know, a 7,500-yard golf course for me would be an absolute monster. But for these guys, it's nothing. So, yeah, the men's game is definitely all about power. But the women's game, you know, their accuracy and the way they play is absolutely phenomenal. I've got a stat here, and this. I found this out because I did a little bit of research. I just think that this is absolutely amazing. But I saw this stat. Let me just find it here. So on average, yeah, here it is. So on average, the top driver, so the top male player in fairways hit, so the person who is at the top of the charts on the PGA Tour for fairways hit, doesn't get in with that stat, doesn't get into the top 30 on the LPGA Tour. That's crazy. Now I know you could say that maybe the ladies' courses have a bit more room. The fairways might be a little bit bigger. But there's other stats as well that show that actually the girls or the women from like 180 yards where they're hitting hybrids, they hit the green an unbelievable amount of time. Their percentage from that kind of range is absolutely staggering. And that's what you've got to do when you watch the women's game. You've got to admire the way they play their golf. And it's a totally different way to the way the men play. But it's still fantastic skills on show. And it really does annoy me a little bit when people kind of dismiss it just because, you know, they hit it maybe, you know, 240, 230 off the tee or whatever. Doesn't matter. It's about how straight they hit it and the skill it takes to do that I think needs to be appreciated. Mark Wilkinson, thanks for joining us, Mark. Unpopular opinion, but love watching the women's golf. Why should it be unpopular though? I agree with you. It is sometimes when you say this, you know, if you went onto I'm a member of one of the big golf forums here, and if you go on there and say something like that, you get absolutely shouted down. And it's just like, I just don't get it. There's still the women's game has got an enormous amount of skill. You know, they just use that skill in a totally different way to what the men do. You know, they're still phenomenal golfers. And I really enjoyed watching this. So it was the LPGA Tour's HSBC Women's Champions in Singapore on a great golf course. Though it was quite weather interrupted. There was a lot of rain knocking about, which really softened up the golf course, which actually made it play quite long for the women. Now, going into the last day, you would have thought for sure the favourites were going to be to win would have been Nelly Korda and Danielle Kang, who ended up finish second and tied third, respectively. But fair play to Jin Young Ko, you know, another one of these South Korean players that on the women's side, they just seem to be able to just churn them out. They must, I've not done a lot of research on it, but there must be an incredible women's academy system in South Korea that they just keep churning out these players that, you know, they just come out and can just win on. It would appear they can just win on tour straight away. So whatever they're doing, it's amazing. And like all the other countries who've got women's golf federations, I'm sure they are, but they should be going over there and, you know, looking at what they're doing and looking to replicate it in their own country. So great win for her. Again, I've just got written down here, just about how the accuracy stats are so good on the women's game. You know, it's the Solheim Cup's an incredible tournament, but it's probably the only tournament where a lot of male golfers will tune in to watch, and I just think that's a great shame. You know, actually, for me, male amateur golfers can learn a lot from watching the women's pro golfers. You know, just around their rhythm, their balance, the way they approach the game. There's a lot of good things to learn from watching the women play golf on the TV. Kent Nicholson, thanks for joining us, Kent. Golf women's game is more relatable to bogey golfers, AMs, than the PGA Tour. That's what I've just said. You're absolutely right. You know, we can't bomb it 330 yards and hit 8 irons 180 yards. But, you know, we do hit it. You know, I don't know for sure, but I would say I probably hit it a little bit further than the women's pro golfers do. But my yardage will be nearer to the women's pro golfers than it is to the if my 9-iron's there, then the women's 9-iron would probably be here behind me, but the men's 9-iron's thinking miles over here somewhere, miles ahead. So you're right. It is actually, in a lot of ways, a lot more relatable. And their short game, they all seem to have a great short game as well. So yeah, I really encourage people to watch the women's golf more. I'm not saying that you should tune in every week, but if you turn your TV on and you look and you kind of just go, "Oh, it's the women are playing," and just turn over, you are really missing out. There's some great stuff to watch there, and you should definitely try and watch it if you can. And also, the women's game is absolutely on its knees. It really is on its knees. It's struggling for sponsorship. It's struggling for, especially on the European, the LET, the Ladies European Tour, which at one point, many years ago was looking quite strong. Now it's just absolutely terrible. There's probably a whole other podcast to be done on this, but there's rumours that Live Golf are going to start up a Live Golf Women's Tour. If they do that, the landscape, the effect that will have on the women's game will be totally different to the men's game. In the men's game, it's caused a big wave, and it's obviously caused quite a bit of a, probably more than a ripple in the men's game. Interesting that Rory's come out today and said that, Liv coming along has been good for professional golf. Well, he's changed his tune pretty quickly, hasn't he? But if Liv do start up a women's tour and pump in the kind of money they're talking about, I just think it will finish off the LPGA and the LET. I just think it will cease to exist because the women would just not be able to turn it down. The money would be so much greater than what they're playing for at the moment that it would just be an absolute no-brainer. They would have to go and play it. And I don't think they would get judged as harshly as the men did, because I think a lot of it with the men was they were already earning a lot of money and a great living on the PGA Tour. So they were seen to be just being even more greedy by going and taking the live money. Whereas if the women did it, then I think everyone would just be like, well, I don't blame them, because, it's just such a massive, increase in cash for the women pros to play on. So the LPGA and the LET, they must be worried about that happening, because it is a threat to their existence. Whereas the Live Golf Tour on the men's side was never going to finish off the PGA Tour. The PGA Tour was always going to still be the bigger tour, but it was going to just put a bit of a dent in the PGA Tour. But on the women's side, it could be absolutely devastating. But I enjoyed watching it. I thought it was a great tournament. It had a great field. All of the top players in the women's game were there from all over the world. It was on a great golf course. The standard was good, and a very worthy winner. I think everyone was kind of waiting to see whether she was going to sort of capitulate down the last few holes, but she was solid as a rock. She didn't look like she was gonna let Nelly Korda or Danielle Kang in at any point. She just played great golf. Like all the top women's golfers, just kept it in play, just kept hitting greens, just, taking her chances when she had them, and didn't really look like she was going to throw it away at any point. So that's it for the LPGA. There's a few more, some nice supportive stuff in for the women's game. It is, like I say, it is worth our support for sure. And the only way that they're going to get extra support is by getting extra sponsors. The only time they're going to get extra sponsors is if the TV ratings go up. So if we all sort of tuned in and got the TV ratings up a bit more, then the sponsors would be more interested because there's more people watching, and it all has a bit of a knock-on effect. So actually, us as spectators can actually make a big difference in these things. I think we forget that sometimes. Okay, we're going to move on to... I was going to do halfway cuts next, but I'm going to leave that to last because that's the one where I'm really going to get on my high horse. Next one is the Asian Tour International Series. Now, I think this is sort of... Live Golf is getting all of the attention at the moment, right? And in the background, what the PIF, so the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, is pumping money into the Asian Tour and what it's called now the International Series, which is like the elite events on the Asian Tour. And it's kind of going under the radar a little bit because these international series events on the Asian Tour are right now they are at least equal, if not more prize money than the DP World Tour events. And I can only see that going up. So I think next year, the international series events on the Asian Tour will have more prize money than the DP World Tour. Okay. And Liv have now announced that the top 4 in the international series get promoted onto the Liv Tour. So there is, a big carrot there to try and earn your way onto the Liv Tour. Now, the counter argument to this was, because what I'm saying here is, as this international series gets bigger and as the prize funds start to go up, are players on the DP World Tour going to say, hold on a minute, I'm playing my golf in the wrong place here. I need to go and play in these international series events, which they would get into, and they're going to be playing for more money, and they've got the possibility to get promoted onto the Liv Tour. But the counter argument to that is, well, if you stay on the DP World Tour, the top 10 get cards on the PGA Tour. So up until recently, that was like a really big thing, and it was like, wow, what an opportunity. Top 10 and you go and get a PGA Tour card and you can go over there and try and make your way on the PGA Tour. The unfortunate thing is, and Eddie Pepperell put this up on his Twitter feed, and he's absolutely right. This announcement of having these limited field no-cut events for for 78 or 80 golfers, wherever it's going to be, means that the 10 golfers that get promoted from the DP World Tour are really only going to be eligible to play in the smaller events on the PGA Tour that aren't going to have that much interest in them, because everything's going to be focused on these elevated designated events where all the big players are playing. I'm trying to think of it. Let's say the John Deere Classic. I don't know why that's sprung to mind. Everyone seems to think of the John Deere Classic when you're trying to think of a rubbish PGA Tour event. It's probably pretty unfair. But, that's the sort of tournament that you're going to get chance to play in on the PGA Tour if you get in the top 10 on the DP World Tour. It's going to be very difficult for you to make your way into these designated events and start to have a go at some of this really big money. So there's going to be an interesting decision here. Where are these players on the DP World Tour? Where are they going to go and play their golf? Are they going to stay where they are and think, okay, I back myself to get top 10 and then I back myself to be a success on the PGA Tour? Or do they go, no, I'm going to go and play the Asian Tour International Series. I'm going to play for bigger money than I'm playing for now on the DP World Tour, and I'm going to take my chances to try and get in the top 4 and play myself onto the Liv Tour, where I've got guaranteed money. To get to that point of guaranteed money on the PGA Tour, like I said, it's going to be difficult to get into those events from the top 10 in the DP World Tour. I hope this is all making sense. But I just think there's a chance here, and Eddie Pepperell agreed, that there's going to be this group of golfers on the PGA Tour that are just outside the top 50 and automatically getting into these elevated limited field events. So they're going to be prime candidates for Liv to try and poach, okay? But then there's all these players on the DP World Tour that I honestly think are going to have one eye on the Asian International Series. I'm thinking, you know what, I'm going to go and play over there because I'm playing for more money and I've got the chance to get on the Liv Tour, where if I get on there, I've got guaranteed money. Last place gets $120,000, which is insane, but, that's what it is. What do you think? Please, again, get into the comments. Do you think DP World Tour players are going to start having a look at this Asian Tour? Are they, is that going to become, is this, this strategic alliance? What is it? For me, this strategic alliance from the PGA Tour was just a strategic move. Yes, it was. But it was a strategic move just to stop Liv from teaming up with the DP World Tour. I've not seen anything so far that is really benefiting the DP World Tour from that strategic alliance. I might be missing something. If I am, get in the comments and let me know what I might be missing. It was at one point, it was those top 10 players, and people might say, oh, well, the Scottish Open's going to be a joint sanctioned event. It already was. So that's not right. If they really wanted to have a strategic alliance, then the BMW PGA Championship at Wentworth, the biggest tournament on the DP World Tour, that should become an elevated PGA Tour event. That would be supporting the DP World Tour. That would show that there's a proper strategic alliance here. But it won't happen. It will not happen. Kent Nicholson, golf. They'll go to the Asian International Series as it's big fish, small pond syndrome. Easier to make a living that way. And you're right, Kent's right there. It's about these guys are making a living. You forget that the guys who are on the PGA Tour, they've not really got any money worries. These guys on the DP World Tour, they are earning a living. And they are going to go to the place where they think they've got the best chance of earning a living. And at some point in the very near future, that international series, I mean, they've all got 2 million purses at the moment. And the reason this propped up on my radar is because today, or was it yesterday, they announced that Close House in the northeast of England, which is a beautiful golf course. You may have noticed that Lee Westwood always had it as a sponsor on his cap. He still might have it. I know they all wear Live branding now, but I think he might still have it on his cap. It's his it's his home golf course. He does a hell of a lot of promotion for that course. So no surprise that it's hosting an Asian Tour International Series, which remember is the feeder tour to the Live Tour. I've actually written on here, will Lee Westwood play in that event, because there wasn't a conflicting Live Tour event that week. I actually saw on Twitter today, he actually announced today that he put on there, looking forward to playing or whatever. So he's obviously definitely going to play in it. I would imagine Ian Poulter will definitely play in it. It's in August in the UK. I mean, you can get any weather in the UK. I mean, that's one of the flipping really frustrating things about living in this country sometimes. But, you should get some decent weather in the middle of August for it. It's a great golf course. It's got a purse of £2 million. So I think you might see quite a strong field for that, and also quite a lot of the DP World Tour players possibly wanting to try and enter it as well. So yeah, I've got here, will DP World Tour players look to play in the International Series, seeing the purses are strong and the top 4 qualify for the Live Tour? So, I mean, I've gone over that already, but I think we just need to keep an eye on this International Series. It's getting bigger. It's going under the radar because everyone's just keeping an eye on the Live Tour and the PGA Tour kind of battle. But I think the International Series is going to play a key part in this war, because I think that Live are going to invest far more in their feeder tour, the International Series, than the PGA Tour is going to invest in the Corn Ferry Tour. I think the PGA Tour are going to put all their eggs into keeping their stars happy, to make sure that their stars don't defect to the Live Tour. And that is not helping the Strategic Alliance on the DP World Tour, and it's not helping all the players on the Corn Ferry Tour. Whereas if the Saudi Arabian Public Investment Fund keep pumping money and growing that international series, I think that's going to poach a lot of these players, and it's going to actually play a big part in the professional golf landscape moving forward. I may be wrong, but I honestly think I'm right. Get in the comments and tell me if you think I'm wrong. Kent says exactly, Craig. It's absolutely true. The PGA Tour, I've got to be so careful. They're putting all of their eggs in one basket, whereas I see Live are doing a lot broader things. Let's just say they keep growing the international series and play all these players from Corn. But don't forget, Corn Ferry players will start looking at that as well, because the international series will have bigger purses than the Corn Ferry Tour. So then the PGA Tour start to lose their their conveyor of new stars coming through. So when the Rory McIlroys and the John Rahms and all of them, they've all gone and they've all, they're in their mid-40s and, thought of as being past their best. Well, if the next players aren't coming through because all of those next players have actually gone to the international series, then that's a problem. Also, they continue to grow the LIV Tour, and also they start the ladies' LIV Tour. Well, all of a sudden, there's going to be a real problem for the PGA Tour if they've just got all their eggs in their one basket by just trying to make sure they don't lose all their stars. It's going to be interesting to see how it pans out, and I don't think we're going to see it all really the way it's going to pan out till the end of 2024. We'll see whether LIV is still holding its own, whether they've still managed to bring some better players across, whether it starts to just run out of steam, or whether actually it continues to, I don't know whether you say grow, but hold its own in the golf ecosystem. But but at the same time, they're building these other arms of their golf ecosystem with these other supporting tours as well. I think it's really interesting. I think the PGA Tour's got to be really, really careful. So, on that note, let's get on to the PGA Tour announcing that so obviously for 2023, they were absolutely petrified that through November, December, January, the LIV Tour were going to take more of their star players. And certainly it looked at one point like Patrick Cantlay and Xander Schauffele were seriously considering going. It was heavily rumoured that those were two that were, that were going to move across. So in order to try and stop that from happening, the PGA Tour announced for 2023 there's going to be 20 designated events. They found all this extra money, which is exactly what Phil Mickelson said, by the way. Everyone gives Phil Mickelson a hard time. Phil Mickelson said that the PGA Tour was hiding millions of dollars that was not being fed through to the players, and that the LIV Tour would give them the leverage to, have more of a say in, the tour and that money. And he's been proven to be absolutely right. Absolutely, because that's exactly what's happened. All of a sudden, the PGA Tour, the players obviously got the power, had this meeting in Delaware, and then shortly afterwards announced that there were going to be these 20 designated events for these massively inflated purses. All the top players were expected to play in 19 of the 20 events, which John Rahm didn't seem to like too much, but he's agreed to do it. And looking at Bay Hill, it was a massive success. Why they felt the need to then for 2024 go to limited fields and no cuts. I mean, they've literally. I thought it was 10. I think I saw today that it's going to possibly be 8. Let's just say it's 10. They've essentially put 10 72-hole LIV Tour events in their calendar, and everything. All the rhetoric beforehand was that LIV isn't proper golf because it's 54 holes and no cut and limited field. Well, okay, it's 72 holes, but it's still a limited field and no cut. It just really has annoyed me that they've gone down this route, because the PGA Tour's real trump card was its history. Now, on the halfway cut, I'm a firm believer, and by the way, I think the halfway cut is an endangered species right now. I honestly think that by 2025, the halfway cut could be gone, completely gone. I honestly think that's the way it could be going. And I think that would be a massive shame for the game of golf. Now, having said that, I think that the cut has to stay. It's an integral part of a golf tournament. It gives Friday some jeopardy, which you completely lose when you've got a limited field no cut event. And it's one of the things on the LIV Tour that kind of all the days kind of almost feel the same, really. Obviously, you get the last day where someone's going to win it, but the halfway cut on a Friday, the amount of times that you see someone grinding down, the last 4 holes to try and make the cut, that's a part of professional golf for sure. Now, I think that this is what I think: the halfway cut should stay. It shouldn't be. They should have stuck to what they were. They should have stuck with what they've done for 2023. They should have stuck with that for 2024. But I've always thought that it's absolutely bonkers that you ask a professional sportsman to come and play in your event, be part of the entertainment of that event, and that professional sportsman goes home making a loss. I've always thought that that is absolutely bonkers, right? So I've always said that, they should take the prize money in these events now is so huge that you could quite easily just skim 200 grand off the winner's check or off the top 5 places, whatever. And then everyone who misses the cut gets a payment that covers their expenses and gives them a little bit of cream on top. So, yes, you missed the cut, but at least you go home and you've made a little bit of a profit for your time invested as a professional sportsman in that event. Now, if you ask a basketball player or a Premier League football player and said, actually, if you don't win today, we're going to take money off you. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, they just laugh you out of the building, wouldn't they? Golf's the only professional sport where you turn on and you are one of the sport's absolute premium performers, which they all are, and you can go home making a loss. I've always thought that that's absolutely bonkers. But the answer to that is not to get rid of the cut. That is the wrong frigging decision. The best decision was, I think, in my opinion, to just give all the people who miss a cut a small payment, which, allows them to at least go home making a small profit for their time they've invested in that event, which is for our entertainment and for the sponsors. See what we've got here. As it stands, it all depends on whether Liv will get world ranking points. Liv are going to get world ranking points, Mark. They are, because, if the official world golf rankings aren't ranking all of the world's golfers, it ceases to exist and isn't important, and the majors will stop using it, and then all the people who are earning money out of the official world golf rankings will stop earning money out of it. So, yeah, the Live Tour is going to get world ranking points. I said on previous podcasts that Alan Shipnuck, who wrote the Mickelson book, he's gone on the record and said he's writing a book about the Live versus the PGA, and obviously the OWGR is a big part of the story for that book. He says that he's spoken to board members on the OWGR who want to remain anonymous, obviously, and they've said that they're in dialogue all the time with the Live Tour, and they are going to get awarded points. Originally, they said it was going to be around April in the Masters. Now it's going to be apparently around July. The fact that the Live Tour announced that they were going to have 4 players relegated and 4 players promoted is another sign that that's part of them getting official golf world ranking points. You absolutely bet your bottom dollar that was one of the stipulations that OWGR put in place for them to get it. People will say, oh yeah, but in the criteria it says that they've got to have 72 holes. There's going to be give and take on both sides here. But make no mistake, if OWGR does not rank Live golfers, and you've got Dustin Johnson drifting out into 150th in the world, when the majors want Dustin Johnson in their event, they want Cameron Smith in their event, they want Bryson DeChambeau in their event, they want Brooks Koepka in their event. Whatever you think, the majors want all the best players, regardless of where they play, in their tournament. And if their criteria is all of a sudden going through the OWGR, but it's a system that's not accurate anymore, then they'll just stop using it, and then the OWGR will cease to be important, and no one will take any notice of it anymore. So they are definitely going to get world ranking points, in my opinion. Kent Golf, Phil speaks the truth. Jay Monahan must be crapping himself. I think Jay Monahan is in a lot better place now. I think he's weathered the storm. I think he would have been worried about who he was going to lose before the Live Tour started its 2023 season, and in the end, he didn't lose anyone. You know, Mito Pereira, Sebastian Munoz, Dean Burmester, Thomas Peters. These are players that, yes, they did strengthen the Live Tour because they were better than the players that were at the back end of those fields. But certainly, the PGA Tour wouldn't have been bothered about losing those players one little bit. So I think Jay's actually feeling a lot more comfortable in his position now than he was. And Kent's just saying as well that, you know, he thinks OWGR is nothing. It's still got time to sort itself out. But they've got to get it sorted soon, because just remember, if the majors all of a sudden just turn around and say, right, actually, you know, we're going to change the criteria for our event. I've said this, I think this will probably be the third podcast I've said this now. But they could quite easily just say, right, top 50 on the PGA Tour, they get in. Top 30 on the DP World Tour, you automatically get in. And top 10 on the Live Tour, you automatically get in. If you're already exempt because you're like Cameron Smith, for example, because he's exempt for the next 5 years, then and he's in the top 10, then number 11 in the Live Tour, you get that place. No, it's easily done. The OWGI is not important within the golf ecosystem. You know, yeah, there's a little bit of kudos about getting to world number one, but really, it doesn't serve any really important process. The one important thing it does is it's used as the criteria for qualifying for the majors. And at any time the majors feel that it's no longer an accurate representation of men's professional golf, they'll just stop to use it. So they'll have to give the Live Tour the amount of points. The interesting thing is going to be how many points they give it, and whether there'll be enough points for Live golfers to move up the rankings. You know, that's going to be the interesting thing when it all comes out. But back to halfway cuts. I mean, Mark saying, if you're a premium performer, then you won't miss the cut. Well, they do though, don't they, Mark? You know, all top players miss the cut at some point. But I just think, regardless of, you know, also when a new pro comes onto the tour, a lot of these guys don't last long, just because, you know, they get off to a bit of a slow start and just run up a massive amount of debt by missing some cuts early on. You know, that some of those golfers might have gone on to become real top premium performers, like you've put there. But because the way the golf ecosystem's set up, it didn't give them a fair crack of the whip. So I do think that if you miss the cut, as a professional sportsman, you should get paid something. It's just that regardless of anything else, just the fact that you are a professional sportsman, you earn your living from playing that sport. Name me another sport in the world, professional sport of any kind of level near to golf, where you would be expected to turn up and play in some of that sport's biggest tournaments, and you have the possibility of going home making a loss. A loss. It's, when you think about it, it's ridiculous. But the answer is not to get rid of cuts and have guaranteed money. For me, the answer is, like I say, just drip a little bit of that money from the top down to give the guys who missed the cut, you know, just something to cover their expenses and a little bit of a cream on top. It's my opinion. You know, like I say, this is all, the whole point of this podcast is that we all have our own opinions. You may disagree with me, and that's absolutely fine. But I honestly, I am really, really have strong beliefs on this. I think the PGA Tour's move is the wrong one. I think what they did for this year was really good. It made sense. Just have all of their best players playing against each other more often for more money, which is going to help. But still, you know, full field events. So these guys that are lower down, they've got the chance to, you know, have that 1 week where they have a top 5 finish and can change their life forever. These limited field events takes that away completely. It's just the top guys enabling themselves to earn more money, which is essentially what everyone criticised the Live Tour for. You can't criticise the Live Tour for being exhibition golf and no cuts, and then not criticise the PGA Tour for these events and taking the same move. You can dress it up however you want. It's the same thing. It's the players trying to make sure that they guarantee themselves more money, in my opinion. Mark is giving 54-hole events the same ranking points as 72-hole events, similar to. I agree. I think the Live Tour events will get less. I mean, this is another interesting thing, right? So, Mark, you've actually just reminded me of something here. So, just to your analogy there with cricket, no, I agree. I think that the Live Tour events will get less points than a PGA Tour event, so for those who don't know, the OWGR used to be done on the strength of the field, right? So basically, it was worked out by all the world rankings of the players in the field. So when the field was stronger, the more world ranking points were attributed to that event. They then changed it for this year, and it's now the bigger the field, the bigger the points, because it's thought of, regardless of who's in that field, the fact that you had to beat more players means you get more points. So actually, the PGA Tour that have gone limited fields, smaller fields with no cut, have actually put themselves in line to get a lot less world ranking points for their biggest events, if that makes sense. So their biggest flagship events under OWGR rules now are going to get significantly less ranking points than some of their other events that have got a full field because there's not as many people in them. So don't be surprised if you see the OWGR back up again and change its criteria, because I just can't see where you're going to have these PGA Tour events with all of the top players in the world playing in them, and the world ranking points are going to be lower because it's a smaller field. It's and if you're gonna penalise Live on the criteria for having a smaller field, then you have to do the same with those PGA Tour events that have got a smaller field. It's all very messy at the moment. It's like the golf ecosystem is changing so quickly all the time that stuff that was put in place quickly becomes outdated really, really quickly. And the OWGR is definitely, by no fault of their own, it has to be said. You've got to remember that the OWGR was set up. So let's just take the criteria, for example, that a tour has to be going for 3 years before it'll be considered for OWGR points, right? That criteria is set up because every tour that would apply for OWGR points would be a tiny tour. It'd be something like the MENA Tour, which got a lot of publicity when Liv tried to circumnavigate by getting an alliance with the MENA Tour. So that tour would then serve its 3 years and would ask for world ranking points, and the players that were playing on that tour would make no impact on the OWGR whatsoever because it's such a tiny tour. What the OWGR never thought would happen would be that a tour would come along and in the first 6 months of its existence would take 28% of the top 50 golfers in the world, which is what Live Tour did, by the way. The rankings at the start of 2022, as they were, when your Sergio Garcias and all those boys, a lot of them were in the top 50. It took 28% of the top 50 golfers within 6 months. And that completely just blew its criteria that was in place out of the water. And all of a sudden, under that criteria, you can't not give Cameron Smith and Dustin Johnson world ranking points for 3 years and expect to stay relevant as a ranking system. Just think about that for a second. It's absolutely bonkers. So they've, this thing where people come on and say, but Liv don't meet the criteria. The criteria became completely outdated as soon as Live Golf took all those players in such a short amount of time, and they are going to, either redraft that criteria or have a bit of give and take on that criteria. My personal thing is, I think that OWGR is saying, okay, we will waiver that 3-year rule, we will waiver that 72 hole stipulation, but you've got to have some kind of qualification system. You can't have a closed shop. So I think that announcement of 4 players up and 4 players down was actually quite telling, and I'm pretty sure that was purely to tick a box with OWGR for Live Golf. So, Kent, the PGA Tour need that headline winners check to compete with Live Golf. Difficult to compete against a bottomless pit that is Live Golf. I mean, like Jay Monahan said, didn't he? I'm trying to remember what he said now. Yeah, he said that, if the ammunition of choice is dollar bills, we can't compete, and he's absolutely right. But I don't think they have to match it. I think they just had to show all of their top players a bit more love and give them some extra money. I mean, you've got to remember the history of these events still has a big pulling power on a lot of these players. They want to win the Arnold Palmer Invitational. They want to win the Players Championship. They want to win Jack's Memorial Tournament. At the moment, no one really wants to win the Tucson Open on the Live Tour at the next event. But to be fair to the Live Tour, you've got to give them time to build their own history. Who knows, in 10 years' time, the Tucson Open on the Live Tour might be a really big event to win. We just don't know. There was a time when the Bay Hill Invitational wasn't that big a deal because it was in its very early stages. So, history takes time to build up, but it's certainly something that is in the PGA Tour's, massively in the PGA Tour's favour. So the players, yes, you're giving them more money, but you've also got this desire where they want to be part of the history of the game and win those tournaments that Palmer won, that Nicklaus won, that Greg Norman won, that Faldo won, that Tiger Woods won. So that's a big part as well of the PGA Tour. Mark on OWGR, but if you waiver that rule for Live, does it still stand for the other tours? They're going to have to rewrite their criteria, Mark. That's simply what it is. They're going to have to move with the times. The times have changed in the world of golf, and their criteria is going to have to change to mirror that. I mean, there's not going to be another tour that's going to come along and cause the massive problem for them that the Live Tour did. So it's going to be interesting. But when Alan Shipnuck, that guy's one of the biggest, most well-known golf journalists, most well-connected golf journalists in the world. When he came out and said that he's spoken to OWGR board members and they told him that there was a lot of dialogue between them and Liv, good dialogue, and they, Liv are going to get OWGR points. Well, that means that they have had to waiver their criteria, haven't they? Because otherwise they'd be saying, no, they're not getting it because they don't meet the criteria. So it is going to happen, and everyone's just got to get used to that fact. It's going to really, piss a lot of people off. But for me, there's too many good players on the Live Tour for, them not to get ranking points. And those players, whether you agree with that decision or not, those players still deserve the chance to be able to play their way into the majors, because the majors are not owned by the PGA Tour and are not owned by the Live Tour. They are completely independent, and they are, the Switzerland within this war that's going on at the moment, and they've just got to stay, in my opinion, they've got to stay neutral and give all players from all tours equal opportunity to qualify for their events. And if OWGR doesn't achieve that, then I think they'll just set up their own criteria. It's as simple as that. The old Live OWGR PGA Tour, you could just go on talking about it for forever, and I'm sure in all of these podcasts it'll keep coming up. But I'm going to wrap it up there. Thanks for everyone again for taking part. I really, really appreciate it. It does make a massive difference when you get into the comments, and it really helps shape the show, which is what the whole idea of doing this live is. Like I say, next week there's not going to be a podcast because I am going to be with my brother out in Florida. We've got loads of plans to get some good content over there. I'm playing 2 extremely exclusive golf courses where I'm not going to be allowed to film, unfortunately. So it's going to be an amazing experience for me, but unfortunately I'm not going to be able to record that experience. I might be able to get the odd little short YouTube short video just of like 30 seconds or something, possibly. But we've got loads of other stuff, loads of other golf I'm playing over there. Also going to be doing a lot of stuff with Grant for his Caddy Story series. That's been very popular. I had some great comments about that series. We're going to do some filming with Grant around that. And we're just trying to organise at the moment. We might be able to get on this one of these exclusive golf courses one evening just for 9 holes with just me and Grant, where we'll be able to film and no members will be involved in it. So we're hoping we might be able to get that organised. But whatever it is, I'm still going to get loads of great content out there. I've got a golf ball. I've been sent a golf ball, a premium golf ball that you have never heard of, which I'm going to be testing. I'm going to be using it in every game out there. I'm going to be testing it. I'm going to be doing a video about it. And I'm really, really interested to see how this golf ball performs, because everything that I've spoken to the brand about and everything they've told me, I've never had a brand that's been so open about their product, and they're allowing me to be totally open in the review of their golf ball, and everything tells me that this golf ball is going to perform as good as any other premium golf ball out there. And I've never heard of it. These guys contacted me out of the blue. They saw my video on the PXG golf ball, and they just reached out and said, can we send you our golf ball because we think it's better than the PXG, or at least as good, or performs every bit as good as a Pro V1 and a TP5, which they all say. But I must admit, all the data that they've sent me from robot testing, and the great thing about robot testing is there's no human element in that. That robot hits it out the middle every single time, and they sent me all the data, and I was like, wow, flipping heck. That's telling me that this golf ball performs right up there with the very best. So, yeah, I've dangled a big carrot in front of you there. I'm definitely going to be using that golf ball over there. I'm definitely going to be recording a review of the golf ball. I mean, there's no better place to test that golf ball out than on the golf courses in Jupiter, Florida. They are hard and extremely fast. You've got to have, a grippy golf ball to be able to, hit those greens and play those shots around the greens and stuff. So definitely the best place to test it out for sure. But I'm really excited to see how it performs. Okay, that's it for today. Thank you very much again, and I will see you in the next video. Remember, no podcast next week, but we will be here in 2 weeks' time, and keep an eye out for the content from America. Okay, thanks again. See you in the next video.